Hey everybody, it's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining us today. Want to get into one of my pet peeves in discussing geopolitics. Um, and the reason why, like I do have a couple of pet peeves, I'm not even gonna lie. There's some things, I still think bricks is goofy, etc. If you haven't saw that video. But there's certain things people say which it shows that they haven't even took the most basic steps to try to understand a general or to grasp a general understanding of the world and how it works. And one of those is the moral order of things. And what I mean by the moral order of things is that people believe that they can take their individual morality, right, and project this universally on the planet as if all people value what they value. I do think there are certain civil characteristics that has been throughout humanity for ages, right? A certain type of a Hammurabi code, ancient Egypt 42 negative confessions. Like going back in civil society, there's an understanding of rules. But understand that was in civil society. The Mongols did not abide by any civil societal rules when they scorched earth across Eurasia, right? Did the U.S. have a civil society rules as they pretty much almost to a form of evaporating the indigenous people of North America through war and directly through war, indirectly through disease. But what happened was these people came, they established themselves, and they dominated in the region. And it was not a civil understanding between these two different societies because peace is a consequence of strength and order. Peace is a consequence of strength and order. It is not a birthright. No one is guaranteed peace as a birthright, as lovely and as ideal as that will be. We got into a conversation, and a person said, name one country that Western invasion, as if the West is the only aggressive people in the history of the world, right? That was already, I'm like, oh, one of these people. That Western invasion has benefited. I mean, one, I think it's such a condescending question, as if why would a country want to benefit the country that they're invading? Isn't the whole purpose of invasion is to take over and assert their interests? That's one. But consequently, you never know how the ball's gonna roll, right? America went to Japan with Commodore Perry, pushed open door policy. Japan's the third largest economy in the world today, on its way to number four. But still, a monumental achievement for a series of island nations separated from the mainland with diminishing population, especially in contrast to its bigger neighbor, China. So it's numerous opportunity. Glorious Revolution, when the Dutch invaded England. In fact, England got invaded numerous times. Vikings, Normans, Germans. So, and all those things build blocks. The Romans, these built blocks in building and developing England because the technology and information, they too an island were isolated from the steady flow of commerce and ideas that were brought to them by invaders. People can say the same thing about the Iberian Peninsula under the Moors for 700 years. So consequently, there are some countries, unfortunately, is done through this way that benefit. But that's neither here nor there. If I wanted to address that question, I would easily address it in that way. But what more importantly is, it's this idea that this person believes that the world exists in a natural, peaceful order. And that's not how it exists. It exists in spheres of influence. This is how the world exists. So if you're a nation or you're leading a nation, You should be focused on how do you expand your sphere of influence. That sphere of influence is going to allow you to have strength and order. That is the law. The world is an anarchic place. Nobody's guaranteeing anybody peace. You achieve that peace through strength and order. Look at Russia. It's in chaos right now, dealing with this Ukraine situation. One of the most powerful countries that ever existed on the planet, the world's largest nuclear arsenal. And even they are having issues what they have to contend with. So it's just not it's not a question of thoughtfulness. It's not a question of condescending consideration. It's a question of arrogance when people talk like this. When you start hearing people talk about the West is bad, these guys are good. This is nonsense. I think, in fact, I rarely even use those words, good and bad. I find them to be nonsensical words, right? It's only advantageous or disadvantageous as far as I'm concerned. If my fortune and my endowment is better after such act, it is an advantageous act. And if my fortune and endowment is worse off from that act, it is a disadvantageous act. And this is how I see the world. We all have a basic, I think, human code of what we would like to see, but there are no pacts. What's the movie Troy, Brad Pitt, Achilles line? There are no pacts between lion and men. Just because I abide by a certain rule, unless I have the ability to impose or protect that idea, or in a society that is able to impose and protect that idea only lives in my heart and mind. I like to harken back to the Peloponnesian War. And this is one of the great stories, and this is how you know you're talking to a geopolitician. Because any person that studies geopolitics is always going to harken back to this story at the end of the day. The more you argue, the more inevitable you're going to come back to this story of the Peloponnesian War. So for those that don't know, the Peloponnesian War was pretty much the world war of its day. When Greece was the center of Western thought and idea and progress, the two strongest states of Greece were at odds and they went to war with each other. Many believe this war weakened Greece to the fact that Alexander the Great was able to relatively easily conquer it. But these two sides went to war with each other. One side, there's this militaristic state, Sparta, and the other side was the more, we could say, progressive. And I use this term loosely, progressive Athens. So they both had their fashions and alliances, and they carried out this war with each other. Athens more of a naval power, Sparta more of a on the grounds continental mold of a power, using its soldiers to impose its will. So throughout the war, as they're trying to figure out how to take each other down, these two formidable city states, the Athenians, the more progressive of the two, not the dictatorial, barbaric Spartans. It was the Athenians that approached one of the islands of the island of Melos. And this story is told by Thucydides. And General Thucydides was very important because he's considered one of the early historians that told history from a factual point of view, like removing the gods aspects, the theology out of it, removing the superstition and religion from the story, but trying to keep it as realistic as possible. So the cities recite the story of the Athenians going to Melos and saying, "Look, you guys have a historical bond with Sparta. We need this land, so we want to set up shop here. We want to make you pay tribute to us." And if you don't do that, we're taking you guys over. So these people of Melos, they said, wait, why would you do that? We don't want anything to do with this war. We are a neutral nation, and we want to be completely out of it. And they seriously thought this abstention would provide them with a veil of protection. Do you know what happened? Guess. Do 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 do. The Athenians invaded. Athenians, the progressive Athenians, invaded Melos. When they invaded Melos, they killed the men and enslaved the women and the children. This is what they did. Eventually, in the Peloponnesian War, the Spartans did win. But as I said, it was too almost. It was almost like a self-defeating, like a punitive victory. There was because it took so much out of both of these city-states in this war. But what was important, and this is called the Melian dialogue. There's this whole situation of Melos trying to assert itself and its neutrality, and it's succumbing to the Athenians' will because the Athenians were stronger. The famous quote comes from this: "The strong do what they want, and the weak suffer what they must." For a lot of these countries in the world, in the leadership and the way they talk like the Malians. They talk as if they're more virtuous or they're better than other countries because they're trying to be above it all. But just like certain other countries, the ones that they purport they're not, they have their interests. They have things they're seeking to pursue. And their neutrality is just a veil from them trying to escape any accountability and responsibility for protecting and asserting the way of life for its people. You can't, there are no neutrals in this world. This earth is too finite, it's too small, too much is known. Since when the Europeans in the 1500s, once they circumnavigated Africa, it's been game on. Cultures colliding. And it's not going back to a more primitive state. At least I don't think anytime soon. And even if it did, it's just going to expand right back out. Because this is the natural state of man. The natural state of man is to expand, to grow, man being mankind. The natural state of man is to grow, expand, to learn, to discover, to explore. Any leadership that stops this, that's trying to put you in this conservative, limited, compact box to restrain these natural urges of any a human society, I think is doomed in the long run. So let's not try to hide behind some veil of niceness. You need to compete. People need to compete. Nations need to compete, and hopefully it's done in a constructive way, in a commercial way, in a as fair as possible way. But you do need to compete. There is no sitting on the sidelines of this game. I've always been an American of African descent. I understand this thoroughly because I always ask myself, the Africans had numbers, they had the resources, but their society was so conservative and it was not pushing growth out, understanding out. It was appreciative of its situation and content with that situation. You know who wasn't content with that situation? The next door neighbors in Europe. They weren't content at all. They were smothered against the seaboard and they were looking to expand, grow, and empower themselves to assert and protect the interests of their people. So I always wonder what those kings on the coastal lands of the Gulf of Guinea were thinking when they saw the hulls of those first European ships hit the sands of their coast. And you see what happened subsequently. Africa not having an idea or a firm grasp of how to utilize its people best in this situation. It was decimated, beyond decimated. It was quartered from the massive extraction of its most vital resource, its people, who were enslaved by the Europeans. So, and many, of course, this was in contract because the Africans took the best deal to them. They didn't understand the moment that they were in, how big the world was, the opportunity that the world provided, and how valuable their people were in protecting their interests. And Africa has been fighting an uphill battle in the global arena since then. Remember, strengthen order. Protect your tribe, your clan, your nation, your interest, your community. This is a duty inherent to the individual in a civil society. Because at the end of the day, nobody owes you anything. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.